So back in 2023, I'd been offering my services as a certified Notion consultant to over 50 agencies, and I had started to notice some common setups that they all needed. I decided to take the best parts of all of those different setups and release it as a Notion template. To my surprise, the template quickly became the #1 solution for agencies inside of Notion. It was featured in Notion's official template gallery, trusted by over 400 agencies, and received a ton of heartwarming 5-star reviews. And I think the reason it was so loved is that it finally allowed agencies to manage the majority of their operations in one place, and it struck the balance between being simple yet powerful. Well, fast forward to today, and we've worked with even more agencies, taken aboard loads of feedback, and taken everything that we've learned to create a new and improved agency template. So in this video, I'm going to give you an in-depth look at that setup. Now, this is an all-in-one solution that allows you to track your content, your deals, your client projects, your hiring, your employee onboarding, and finances. It also includes the Agency OS, which is our take on EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. Essentially a codified way of working which determines how you create your company vision, build out your standard processes, and execute on a day-to-day basis. And I'll break this video down into the 6 key workflows that every agency needs to manage. Plus, I'll include a mini lesson on EOS and how we've adapted it for agencies. Of course, if you'd like a complete done-for-you agency system that you can add to your workspace with a click of a button, you can find the template at workflowlab.co/agencyhq or using the links down below in the description. Otherwise, use what you see here today to inspire your own build. So let's get the show on the road and dive into the template. Almost every agency that I've personally worked with just relies on referrals for lead generation. And the problem with this is it means they do not have a predictable way of generating new business. Creating content is one of the best things that you can do for your agency because A, you get the benefits of inbound marketing, and B, it's the quickest way to build trust and authority with your clients. This first workflow not only simplifies the process of content creation, but has been optimized for content repurposing so that you can squeeze as much value out of each and every one of your content ideas. So this workflow has 3 sections. First of all, as I said, the ideas. And each of these ideas can then contain multiple pieces of content for repurposing here in the content project section. And then finally, we have a section for research, which is divided by a swipe file, a place to actually capture research for each of the pieces of content, as well as a place to do keyword research if you're using a tool like Ahrefs for YouTube. So the way this would work is, for example, we would first capture a new idea, and we actually have this new idea form that we can share with the rest of the team to encourage everyone in the team to contribute to content creation. And then let's say, for example, we have this new idea, social media engagement strategies. We might plot it as an idea first, and then when we want to actually work on the idea, we can move it up to this up next status. And then we have several properties that basically allows us to scope out this idea. So first of all, if you use content pillars for your content, so basically areas of content that you typically create, you can obviously tag the content pillar here. Again, if you're using keyword research, you can, using the relation to the content keywords database, link what the keyword is. And inside of each of our actual keyword pages, we have properties for the difficulty and search volume, and then also a link out to the actual keyword research itself. And then also we have this idea merit property. So essentially, what is the reason why we want to make this piece of content? So in some cases, it will be that it fits nicely within one of our content pillars. Or in other cases, it might be because it's a particular keyword that we're really trying to drive towards. Or it might just be a general gut feeling that we have for this piece of content. There's lots of different merits that you might add and customize yourself, but this allows us to sort of justify the reason why we want to make this piece of content. And then also we have here the angle. And so this is, again, just for visibility of the team. What's the reason why, a short pitch for why we want to make this piece of content. Before I dive in a little bit deeper, you'll also notice within Agency HQ, all of the properties come shipped with a property description. So at any point in time, if someone's not sure about what a property is doing, they can come and hover over the actual description itself and quickly learn what it does. So once we have scoped out the idea, we can actually then open up the idea as a page, and this is where we can create multiple pieces of content for this one particular idea. So once we create those pieces of content, they come into the content project section and they go into this pipeline view. And so essentially we have all of these different statuses to give visibility to the team of how each of the pieces of content are getting on. So just jumping into this YouTube, you can see inside of each of the content projects, we have some properties here at the very top. We have a progress bar showing how far along we are, and that is based on these tasks that we actually have in here as well. So we have the actual project, and then we actually have tasks within the project to help us project manage this. And these tasks are actually created automatically based on some of the fields in here. So based on the publish date, we get the due date being automatically assigned. And then also based on, if we open up these more properties, based on the team that's been scoped for this project, now you can see each of these tasks have been assigned to these people. Diving a bit deeper, we also have some data that comes along with project managing one of these projects. So for example, this YouTube video, we have a title and thumbnail that we need to come up with and think about ahead of time. And I've actually got these AI blocks in here, and it will basically take the title of this page and then generate some ideas for different variations of that title. So if I hit generate here, you'll see it's going to give me a few variations of this title, and I'll decide which one is the best for me. And then again, once I have decided on the title and maybe adjusted this page title here, I can come to the actual thumbnail here, and it's also going to generate some ideas for thumbnails. We of course will also need to create a script for one of these YouTube videos, and under these toggles we have a place to capture that research, which actually links out to our core docs database. So for example, here we have a link to an article that has some social media strategies. We also have here a structure, or a recommended structure, and essentially we keep it inside of this block because we actually then use this AI block here, which basically references the structure toggle to recommend the structure that it should write the script in. And then finally, we actually have the main ideas of the script itself. So this is where you would jot, what is this YouTube video going to be about? You can pop it in here. And then once you have done that, again, you can hit generate, then the AI block is actually going to write the script for you. And again, you can go in there and tweak it. And then finally, we also have a section for publishing. And again, we're using AI blocks here, so we can create some keywords based on the script toggle. And it's going to come up with some keywords for us. And then based on those keywords, we can then create a description for us. What I also have in here is a sort of script block, or a code block. And this is where I put my description in, so I don't have to rewrite my description every time. So once I've hit this generate block and created the actual description section that goes in here, then I have everything else that's already been filled out for me, and I can just hit copy and then paste that over in my description in YouTube. And then finally, a few other details when you're publishing you want to think about is the end screen, the playlist, and potentially the pinned comment. But all of this can be managed within Notion alongside the actual project management of the tasks and who has to do what. So once you have all of these pieces of content creating those lovely inbound leads for you, we'll need somewhere for them to go. So let's dive into the deals workflow. So agencies typically have longer sales timelines than most businesses, often with multiple sales calls and potentially multiple proposals. So it's very easy for things to fall through the cracks and for there to be a lack of visibility on where a deal is in its stage. This workflow gives your team an easy way to track deals, to create and share proposals, as well as report on all of the data that's being collected. So here is the deals workflow. So let's say that we have a new deal that we want to capture. We can hit this new deal option. And what it's going to do is actually open up a form for us that's going to basically force anyone who's having to put deals into this database to capture all of the right pieces of information. So first of all, we'll put in the prospect name. Let's say it's David Smith. Let's say they are the CEO of this particular company. And let's say that their email is David Cloud Chef, which is an AI-powered meal planning app. We can capture their phone in here. We can capture the actual company name, Cloud Chef, the company website. So basically, this is a forcing function to make sure that we capture all of this information the first time. Then we come to the expected services, and this links out to our services database. So what services is this prospect interested in? Let's say they want content creation and website design. And then what is the expected value of this deal? Let's say it's $20,000. We also have an option to capture the lead source. So let's say this was a piece of content that they came from, and then obviously the salesperson that who's going to be in charge of this. And then when we hit submit, that's actually going to trigger an automation in the opportunities database, and it's going to create a couple things. So as you can see here, we have the Cloud Chef deal that's been created, and I've had myself assigned here, which is great. And then the other thing that this has done is if we come to these view details, it's actually created a company entry in our company's database for Cloud Chef. So it's created two pieces of information or two database pages from that one form. And in the Cloud Chef page, we have all of the contact person's information, contact email, and then it's also related these two items together. So now Cloud Chef, the deal, is also associated with Cloud Chef, the company. So now we have this deal in here. Essentially, all we need to do is try to move it through the pipeline, and whoever the sales lead is, their one job is basically to get this deal to go to the very next stage in the pipeline. And what we can actually do is inside of the page, we can use this tasks section to basically make sure that we remember to follow up with this person every time we make contact with them. And then also what we also can do is track all of the different updates, meeting notes, call notes inside of this doc section. So let's say we have just shot an email over to David, then I can basically set this task as complete. In the doc section, I can say emailed David, ask him to book discovery call. And then I also might give myself a follow-up task to follow up with David, and I can set myself as the assignee, and I can also set the due date. Let's say we want to follow up tomorrow. Then let's say David got back to us and he's actually booked onto a discovery call with us. Well, now we can move this Cloud Chef deal into the DC book stage. You'll notice now that he's in a stage with another deal, we get a sum of the expected value here at the top of each of the different stages, which is handy. And then also because I have moved him into the DC book stage, that triggered a database automation, which has first of all set a task for myself today to prep for the Cloud Chef discovery call. But what it's also done is it's logged in our doc section an update to say that Cloud Chef was moved to DC booked on January the 23rd. And it's also created a Cloud Chef discovery call notes page where I can basically start to plan the discovery call, and I have an entire sort of templated script for me to walk through here. And so I can basically jump on discovery call and have all of this information in front of me as I talk to the prospect. So let's say everything went well on discovery call, and now we've moved this into the draft proposal stage. Again, that's created a new task in here for me to draft the proposal. And again, it's also created a doc here to where the actual proposal will live. So now if we open up this proposal, what you'll first notice is this has 3 subpages in here. And this essentially allows you to create what I call a proposal funnel. So essentially, first of all, we have the actual proposal itself. Again, this all has its own templates where you can put all of your usual information in, and then you can edit the actual proposal template to this particular prospect. So it really speeds up the writing process of this proposal. So let's say we've drafted together this proposal. If we want to share it, we would come up here and say publish to the web using Notion's web feature. And then we're also going to copy this link and drop it in this Cloud Chef property, which is called proposal URL. And essentially what this is going to do is now we can move this draft proposal into proposal sent. And what this will do is send a automated email to David, which is going to have a link to the proposal and a pre-written message basically saying, "Hi David, please take a look at the proposal and get back to us as soon as you can." So this is what it's going to look like for David on his side. So he's just inside of his browser and he's looking at the proposal just inside of Notion. All looks very clean and professional. He can take a look at the proposition, the amount, look at your results from other clients. And then, as I said, we have this basically 3-tiered decision of what he can do. So it's saying, please choose only one option. If you're happy with the proposal, please hit this button to sign the contract. If you'd like to discuss the proposal further, we then have a link to our Calendly booking, so they can just instantly book a follow-up call with us without having to email us and for there to be back and forth about that. Or the final thing that they could do is actually decline the proposal. And if they click through to this link, they will be taken to our rejection proposal form. And again, they can fill in this form itself, and this form would then be sent off to our team, and our team will get a notification saying essentially the person has rejected the proposal. But what's great about this is it means, first of all, your proposal isn't going to get ghosted because the client has 3 very clear actionable steps that they can take. And if they are not willing to go forward with the proposal, instead of just ghosting the actual proposal itself, they can actually just decline it without having to actually speak to you directly and have the awkwardness of that. So first of all, you're not having your proposals ghosted. But secondly, you're also getting a reason why here, where it says why no longer interested. So you're getting a reason why they have rejected the proposal. And again, you can use the CRM to log that reason. So you can actually start reporting on the data of what are the different reasons people are rejecting our proposals. But let's say David's very happy and he will go through to sign the contract. And again, you can embed the contract in here. So he could click through to a e-signature platform and sign the contract. And then finally, if he's ready to pay the invoice, he can then go through and pay the invoice here as well using something like Stripe. You also notice that the very next step for this client to do is to complete the onboarding funnel, and I'll talk about that in the next section of the video. But before I do, let me show you a bit more on the deals workflow side. So as I said, inside of this workflow, we also have some opportunities to report on our data. So we can see in this Notion chart, we're getting a view of the won versus lost of all of our different deals. Based on the actual expected value of them. So that's one thing we can see. Another one we have here is the lead source. So we can see based on the won deals, what were the different lead sources and where are they coming from. And also down here at our company section, we can see the value by client. So which of our clients is actually spending the most with us, maybe some that have multiple projects, and we can see each value based on the client. So once you have closed your clients, you will then need to onboard them and actually deliver the services. So let's dive into that next. Client management for agencies can often be complex with having multiple different projects with a client for multiple different services, as well as the opportunity for custom work. This next workflow strikes the balance of being able to structure everything in an organized way, automate as much as possible, but also having the flexibility for custom work. As well as that, I'll show you how we can connect this to an external client portal, as well as track your time for billable hours. So this workflow actually begins at the proposal funnel, as we saw in the last section. And as I said, we see at the very last step of the proposal funnel, it then links out to our onboarding funnel. So if David was paid the invoice and signed the contract, he could then click complete onboarding funnel, and then he's going to be taken to this page. And essentially we have a message here saying, thank you for paying the invoice, and that this funnel will take around 10 minutes to complete. So the first thing that he's going to have is this onboarding video. So a welcome saying thank you and just giving them some key information about what they can expect with working with you. Then they would move forward to the actual onboarding call. So again, we can link to a booking platform like Calendly, and they can actually book the onboarding call straight away. And then we also have this onboarding form, again using Notion forms. So any information that we need to collect about the client, we can do here. So for example, if you have any particular questions that your fulfillment team need answered in terms of maybe branding questions or particular key messaging, they can capture that information here. The client can send it off. And then finally, a final message to say what the next steps are and what the client can expect. So that's what happens for the client on the proposal funnel / onboarding funnel side. And then internally, we also have a onboarding form that we fill out that also triggers a bunch of automations. So if we hit this one deal button, this is going to open up this one deal form. And so we'll basically input what the company is and all this information. So the company, a link to their software portal, which I'll explain in a second, their contact details, their agreed services, and the total deal amount. And then also the payment plan, how are they going to pay for their services? Let's say it's 50% upfront, 50% on completion. And then we would submit. So again, we have a database automation, and this is basically going to deal with all of the onboarding tasks that you typically have to do manually. So first of all, we're going to update the deal to 1. Then we're also going to create the client projects that we need to work on this inside. And then also we're going to send a welcome on board email to the client. We can also use Notion's webhooks to link this out to another automation tool like Make or Zapier. And we could then do a whole bunch more of onboard automations if we liked as well. So for example, if we want to create a Google folder for the client, if we want to create a Slack channel, or anything else that you can think to automate in your onboarding, you could also link out to that and deal with that at this point as well. But for us, we can see inside of our deals workflow that the Cloud Chef has been updated automatically. And then now coming into the client workflow, we should see that we have Cloud Chef and the client project has been created for us automatically. Now the automation only creates one client project by default. And so if you want to manage all of the tasks for this one client inside of one client project, you can, but we also have the flexibility to split this off into multiple projects. So for example, if we wanted a separate project for the website design and for the retainer content creation, we can. So let's go ahead and create those. And what's great about being able to split this off into separate projects is we can then define different due dates and start dates for the difference between a one-off project and a retainer project. So for example, the website design would be a one-off project and that would have a due date. So for example, February 21st, whereas our retainer project for content creation is obviously just ongoing. So there isn't a due date. So we can then leave that empty. And the same for management. This can now just become a general project for onboarding and managing this particular client. And that won't have a due date, but it might have a start date, which we've logged in here. So we can say when the client actually officially started. We can also decide different team members for each of these separate projects. So for the website design, we would have Rachel as the web dev. And for the content creation project, we would have John as the social media manager and video editor. So we can actually start to scope out these projects slightly differently for each one. And then also what we can do is once we actually trigger the automations by moving each of these statuses into planning, we can now have different tasks with different due dates based on that information. So for our management project, we have some onboarding tasks that have been created for us automatically. For our website design project, we have some tasks that have been created, again, automatically with assignee and due date based on the due date of this particular sub-project, and then also the same for our content creation. If you need to track time for either paying your contractors or if you're using billable hours for your actual contracts, we also have time tracking inside of Agency HQ. So for example, let's say Gather Brand Assets is assigned to me. I can then press this start button, and that is basically going to bring up this attention message here that's basically saying, remember to click stop when you're no longer working on task, and I can hit continue. I can of course go ahead and work on that task, and now I've given it a bit of time, I can then also hit stop and stop tracking time for this task. And if I come into the task itself and come to the view details, I can now see in this time tracking section that this has tracked 12 minutes overall. For the actual Cloud Chef management client project, this is also rolled up. So if I come to the view details here, I can see that overall for this overall project, I have tracked 12 minutes. And then I can manage all of my time tracking from across the workspace in our timesheets page. So for example, I can first see things tracked by different participants, and I can actually say from what time range. So if I pay my contractors weekly or monthly, I can set this range here, and then I can see a count of how much time they've tracked. And then I can also do the exact same for individual clients as well. So I could come up here and change the start dates, and I can see for each of the clients how much time has been tracked. So for example, that Cloud Chef currently is showing a sum of 0.2 hours. And again, I can use this start date to adjust that. So if I need to charge my clients for this particular month, I can do that date range and then see that in here. Jumping around here, if I also dig into the actual projects themselves and looking at the website design one as an example, you can see here the title is tasks and deliverables, and that's because each of these rows for the task database can either represent a one-off task that needs to be completed or an overall deliverable. So for example, create the website homepage might be the actual deliverable, And then if we use the subtask feature, we can then break that down into all of the different subtasks that we need to do to complete this one-off deliverable. What's great about using Notion in this way is you can get very granular about who is owing what subtask. When you have a really big task that might be assigned to multiple people, it can be hard to have accountability, but it also can be hard to track time for that task. As well as if you want to assign any SOPs to that procedure. If you have a massive procedure, you have to write a really lengthy SOP. So breaking it down to this subtask gives you all of those advantages, but most of all, make sure the person who is ultimately accountable knows what to do and when to do it. Because we break down the deliverables as subtasks in this way as well, we can also consider the due date, the due date. And so the ultimate due date for this deliverable, the website homepage design, is next Wednesday, but we can also see exactly when we need to, first of all, create the wireframes, develop the mood boards, come up with the mock-up, and you have the exact due dates of when these should be completed. So over on your team's individual home dashboards, they can actually go to the today view and know exactly what tasks they need to do today. What we've also done for deliverables inside of Agency HQ is given different templates for different deliverables here, as you can see. So one for homepage design, one for full website design, one for a YouTube video, for a blog post. And so when we choose any of these templates or when it's generated using our automations, when we now open this deliverable or this parent task as a page, you'll see we have all of the subtasks within here, but then also we have a section to basically plan the deliverable and put any notes and information we want in here. But more importantly, we have a section to create a client feedback page. And so essentially this is a page you can now share with your client to get really accurate feedback on each of your deliverables. So for example, this website homepage design feedback, first of all, it tells them how to use the page. Then it gives them a brief overview of what good feedback looks like. And now we have a very clear distinction of how many rounds of feedback we're going to give. So only 2 rounds of feedback for first and second drafts. We can input the deliverable in here. So if it was website homepage design, we might make a Figma and put it in here, or we might turn it into a presentation if we really want to impress them and upload that in here. And then we have a bunch of questions that we would basically ask the client to fill out to basically give us feedback on this. In our content creation project, here's another example of deliverable for a YouTube video. And again, if we open this up, we'll have some subtasks in here, but we also have a section to plan this. And this actually models exactly how you might be creating your own content. So a section for title and thumbnail, for script, all of this good information. And again, we have another section for client feedback with the same instructions, but for the actual feedback itself, it may be slightly different. So for example, if you wanted to upload the video here, you could, and then it might be that you want to have this button that allows the client to create new timestamps and to input the information in here. Now, if you want, you can just take any of these feedback pages and hit share, publish this to the web, make sure that they have can edit content access, and then essentially send this as a link over to the client and they can open this up in their web browser. And then if they want to actually add feedback, they would need to create a Notion account and add the feedback in there. Or alternatively, and I'll show you this next, we can use Softer as a client portal and basically have all of this information go into the portal. So here is the client portal that we host on Softer. We've created an entire video about how to create this type of portal. So if you want to see more about the actual features themselves and how this works, definitely check out this video. But just to explain what this essentially is, it's an integration with Softer, which now allows us to take bits of information from our databases and share them securely with the client without jeopardizing the rest of the information in there or any of our other clients' information. And so we can see in this portal, when we first send this to them during onboarding, it gives them a really nice onboarding experience because they've completed the onboarding funnel and then they're sent to this portal and we have this welcoming video. But essentially this is broken down into 3 pages. So first of all, we have this inbox area. And the first tab is going to show us or show the client any tasks that we may need them to complete. So we might just have a reminder task here to make sure they've completed the onboarding funnel, and this links out to the actual onboarding funnel itself here, so they can go through that. And at any point they can then mark this off as done using this done button here, and that should clear it from the inbox view. So tasks that they need to complete. Then we also have things that we need them to approve. And again, this is where we might input this into the portal itself. So create website homepage design is the actual deliverable. And then we have the link to the Notion page. And so essentially now the client can come in here, read this information and actually open this up, edit the page, create a Notion account, and then actually give us feedback in here. Once they've done that, again, in the portal, they can either say that this has been approved or that they have given us feedback. And then hopefully by doing so, again, this will clear from their inbox. So anything that they need to get done is in the inbox section. I can use the navigation bar up here to go to the other pages. So the other page we have is progress. And this should show us all of the projects that we're currently working on with them. So we can see management, website design, content creation. We get a progress bar of all of the different sections, as well as due dates for, again, one-off projects that might have due dates. And for any of the given projects, they can actually click into the project itself, and they can come here and see all of the different deliverables that we might be working on for them, and how we're getting on with them, as well as the option to actually request deliverables here using this form here. And then finally, we have a resources section, and the resources section is basically going to bring together anything from our docs database. And so any of the meeting notes that we might be having with our client can go in here, but as well as anything for client SOPs. So for example, we have this how to customize website, and we can click into that as a Notion doc. And there might be SOPs on how that client can do that. So anything they need to reference will be in this resources section here. The final thing we have is if you track client health for each of your different clients, we have this client health tracker here. And essentially we have 3 different number properties that make up the overall client health. So first of all, the NPS score, if you track NPS or Net Promoter Score, you can add this in here. So I think all of this is out of 10. So let's say this is 8. Let's say the results is essentially, has the client seen any results? And we can judge this out of 10. And then finally, engagement might be how often are they joining meetings, responding to messages. And let's say this is a 7. And then based on all of that information, it will give us an overall client health score. So now you have standardized all of the processes over on the client side of things. The next thing you might want to consider is actually outsourcing some of your delivery work to someone else. So let's dive into the hiring workflow. A lot of HR software is very expensive and the majority of the time overkill for agencies. But luckily with Agency HQ, we can get the majority of the process done. So let's say for Marketing Lab that they are looking to hire a new account manager. Again, we have these helpful buttons at the top here that where we can create a new entry nice and easily. And let's say this is for an account manager. We'll open this up as a full page and we can start inputting some of the information. So who is ultimately the hiring manager for this person? Let's say it's myself. We can say what department they're going to be in, and this is in relation to our departments database. So this is for fulfillment. The start date would be when we are hoping for them to join the team by. So let's say it's next month. And then now you can see inside of this account manager option, we have a template that is obviously going to help us with this. Like all of the databases, there's automations that are going to help us that will be triggered when we move this into planning. So now we've scoped this out with all of the different assignees and due dates. Let's move this into planning. So now you can see we have a number of tasks that we need to go through. So the first one is to complete the hiring plan. And up here in the hiring docs section, we have a hiring plan that's been created for us. So when we open this up in the hiring plan, essentially we have a way to scope out this new hire. So the first thing is to identify the pain. So what was the reason why we want to hire this person? What pain are they going to solve for us in the business? Then we look at our KPIs database and we have a link to it here. And we're basically thinking about which KPIs is this person going to own. We can think a bit about employee benefits in terms of salary, 401k. We might also put together an interview plan if this is a particularly extensive hiring project. we can ask ourselves if we're hiring for experience or if this person is going to be needed to be trained. We can think about what I call the 5 T's, which is the talent goals and the talent qualities. And then also we can then start to scope out the actual roles and responsibilities. And this links out to our roles database. And you can see we already have an account manager role within here. And if we open up this account manager role, it actually links to our processes database. And so we can see all of the different processes that the account manager is currently in charge of. So basically we need to decide which roles this person is going to belong to. It may be multiple roles within a smaller agency. So now we've completed the hiring plan, we can mark that off as done. And we have assigned the interview team. And then the next thing it's asking us to do is complete the job post. So if we come again to the hiring docs section, we actually have a job post section here. So I'll create a new job post here, and then this subpage is actually where the web page is going to be hosted, and you can see it's already been hosted. And so we basically just put the title of this person, so account manager. And then we always have a template to help us with this. So we can fill in the about us, the actual job description, key responsibilities. All of this has kind of already been scoped out using that hiring plan, so we don't have to worry too much. But ultimately, we have a how to apply section at the bottom and an apply now button. So once we have this ready, we can send this link out on all of our different hiring platforms, advertised on all of our different content channels, and then any new applicant will come to this page, be able to read all of this information, and then most importantly, they can come to the bottom here and hit apply now. So if I was someone who wanted to apply, I would hit apply now and enter my information. So my name, my email, I'll just put my own so we can actually see what the emails look like, phone number, then also I can say which position I'm applying for, which is going to be account manager, fill in information about my current employer, and then I can even attach my CV here. Again, we have some automations powering this process. So just by submitting that form, that applicant has now been added inside of our account manager project as a candidate here at the bottom. And then our candidate has also received an email from us that basically says, thank you for applying, and that they should expect for us to get back to them in the next 2 weeks. So the next task in this project is telling us to create a shortlist. So obviously we'll have multiple candidates arriving in the applied section. And what we can do is open up these individual applications and come to view details. And we can basically look at their CV. If we ask them any questions during that form, we can take a look at what their answers were, and essentially from this information start to put people into our shortlist. So let's say John Adams goes into our shortlist, and we have obviously multiple people in here. We can then mark create shortlist as done. And so the next thing we need to do is create a candidate task. And so what we can do is come over to our hiring docs section, and we have a candidate task page here as well. So inside of this candidate task page, again, we have a template that's been set up for us. So we can basically just edit this template and give instructions to the candidate of what exactly we want them to do. We can then share this page to the web as well and grab the URL link and then send that link over to each of our candidates that we want to take a candidate task. Once we receive our candidate tasks, of course, we'll want to review them and then decide who we want to move over to have an interview with us. And again, we'll move John over to interviews, and we have a database automation that's working here that's going to send him an email. And here's that email saying, again, thank you for applying. You made it through to the second round, and a link for them to book a interview with the hiring manager. And then hopefully if John is successful, we will send him a offer letter. Again, this will automate using the automations here. So send the email automatically to John, and then hopefully he will accept. Of course, once you've made your hire, you will then need to onboard your new team member. So let's jump into that next. Employee onboarding can be the difference between your team member succeeding or failing. Poor onboarding results in inconsistent performance, and the CEO truly never being able to relinquish control over that position because that new hire consistently has to ask them questions. So let's jump into how this workflow can help with that. So for the management space, we have a on and offboarding section and also a general development for each of our employees. So let's say John Adams did accept our offer. We can create a new management project for him. So I'll call it John Adams And then also I can say who the employee was. And then also add the manager, let's say it's myself. And then also in the more properties, I can say when the start date is. So let's say he's actually starting next week on a Monday. Now I've done that, I can move this into the planning stage, which is going to trigger the automation. So as you can see, what this automation does is essentially give us all of the onboarding tasks that we need to manage this new hire. And we have this grouped by the assignee. But what's great about this is we have obviously the onboarding checklist that John would need to complete himself. So meeting with the manager, completing onboarding steps, watching the Notion Workspace full tutorial, reading up on our vision, things like that. And it also has links out to wiki items as well, which is in relation to our wiki database. So we have the things John needs to complete, but what we also have are the things that we internally need to complete. So all the admin tasks. So for example, update all of the calendar events for this new staff member, or reassign any of the recurring tasks that they're going to take over. So we have a real comprehensive look at project managing this onboarding in terms of what they need to do, but also what we need to do. Once John joins our team, the first page that they will navigate to is the Start Here page in Notion. And you can have a welcome video embedded here, but also we link instantly to this management project. And if I was John logged in, I would see John management project shown here. And so the very first thing they will do is basically come to that page and begin working through all of the onboarding tasks that we need them to complete. Once John has been successfully onboarded, we can actually move him over into the development stage and switch over to this view. And this is where all of our employees are eventually going to live. And this is essentially how we're going to manage the development of them. So a few things that we have here. First of all, we have some tasks for the actual manager to prepare for the one-to-one with John, and also to host the one-to-one. So they can, again, project manage that inside of this page. But as well as that, we have this one-to-one database that we can rename to John Adams. And what we can actually do is make this database only accessible to myself and John, and remove everyone else's access from this. And so now we can create a new one-to-one, and we have, of course, a template here that helps us. And inside this template, we're obviously going to ask John questions about how he's feeling, what's been on his plate, reviewing the client projects he's in charge of, reviewing his KPIs and how he's getting on with them, initiatives, personal development, to-dos, and a final wrap-up. And we can capture all this information in here and add any notes. And this will only be private between the manager and the direct report. The next and final workflow I want to dive into is our finances workflow. Now, we don't use Agency HQ as a formal P&L sheet. You'll still need to use an accounting software to do that. Instead, we use this finances workflow to track our invoices and to actually get a bit more specific about our budgeting. So here we are at the finances workflow, and at the very top, we have a revenue database. And what we can actually do is automate the revenue coming in. If we use, for example, Stripe, we can get all of the payments that are coming into Stripe to come into this database as well, and also assign the date and the amount. And then we can also track the services it's coming in for as well. And we can also look at this portion of the database if we are using setters and sales reps, and we can start to say how much each of the setters are getting, what percentage. Let's say it's 10%, and also the sales rep, let's say that's 10% as well. And so now we can see that the setter is getting 2,500 from this 25K deal. The sales rep is getting 2,500 and the total commission is 5,000. So we can start to manage commissions in here. But what we can also do is start to use Notion charts to really report on this data and see how we are compounding our revenue over time. The next thing we have are invoices. And so first of all, you could also automate the invoices if you're using an accounting software like Xero. You can basically just bring the invoices in here and track them inside a Notion so that, for example, your account managers can see if invoices have been paid, if they need to follow up with the clients on calls, that sort of thing. But alternatively, you can actually host the invoices inside of Notion as well. So let's say Acme Co has this particular invoice, and we can say what the issue date is, the due date, the services, the amount, and then also we can add information for the actual payment, or if we want to link to pay online using Stripe. And then as always, you can share this page to the web. And so now the client can see this invoice and choose to pay online or via bank transfer. And if you actually create a PDF of this and link it here, the client can actually download this invoice as a PDF as well for their own files. And then finally, these last two sections are really for budgeting and getting more granular about how you're spending your money. So the first one is the regular expenses database. And so essentially you can group this by expense categories and then basically list what the expenses are. So you can see in the people category, I've listed the different roles that we are paying for. And I can say, for example, the thumbnail designer, we are billed monthly by them and the cost is $50. Obviously it would be way more than that, but we can see the monthly cost is $50 and the yearly cost is $600. Alternatively, if we were paying a video editor on a quarterly basis, we can input quarterly here as $150, and then the monthly and yearly cost will be worked out automatically as well. And now that we have this information, we can then create what I like to call an expense ratio. So on the side, we have the expense ratio here of what our monthly revenue is. Let's say it's around 30K. Our target profit margin is 30%, so our target profit is about 8,000. And then essentially we can use the expense categories database to see if we are under or over our targets. So if we want to basically say we only want to be spending about 40% of our overall expenses on people, then the target would be 40%. And then the target expense here would be around 11,000. And at the moment it's showing that our actual is 100, because if we go into the expense category, you can actually see the expenses in here. Obviously that's unrealistic, but if it was 100, then the difference would be 11,000, and we are currently under that target, which is a good thing, which is why it's shown in green. Alternatively, for software, if we wanted 10% of our overall expenses to be software, that would equate to about 2,700. And at the moment, we're actually spending 3,000 on software. And again, if we open this up, we can see the exact expenses here. And now we can see that this is showing in red as it's over that particular category. So using this expense ratio and category section, we can essentially set targets for how much we want to be spending in each area of our business, and then actually equate that to how much we're actually spending. And then we can also open up each of these expense categories and see exactly what those expenses are. So the final thing that I want to show you here is our agency OS. And as I said, this is our take on EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System. But essentially, this is going to be the actual way that you run your agency. We've got all of the different workflows and the way we manage different processes, but essentially this is the backbone of this template and how you can actually ensure that you get success in your agency. So diving into this, essentially we have three main areas: vision, process, and execution. And then the resources section is basically for any additional stuff that you might want to plug in here. For example, if you want to have a company calendar in Notion, you could pop that here as well. So starting from the very top, vision, we have the first page is a link to a page that actually lives inside of our wiki database, but it's our VTO, which is the Vision Traction Organizer. And essentially this is the one page that all of your team should read when they first join. And what this does is empower them to have all of the sort of decisions to align with your visions with 4 different areas. So first of all, just a general what we do so they can understand what the agency is, and then the 4 areas. So the 4 areas are first of all purpose. So this would be sort of your mission statement. Then we have the 3-year target, and I'll show you how you plan for your 3-year targets in a second. Then we have core values, and then finally strategic anchors. So in theory, by reading this page, all of your team will then be able to closer align to your vision and how you would make decisions in your company, so that they can be empowered to go away and make those decisions themselves. Then the next thing we have is planners, and in Agency HQ, we plan on a 3-year basis and a quarterly basis. And I've done this because I've found it's what works best for agencies. If you plan annually, you'll notice this annual planning isn't here. If you plan annually, what tends to happen is it's not quite enough time to really get something done, ambitious done, but it's too far a time to actually take any action on the thing. So 3-year and quarterly we found is the sweet spot. So for 3-year plans, you can see we've got an example one here for 2025 to 27. Essentially what we're doing is we have the year 1 starting point. So this would be in 2024, how did you end the year? And we're doing that for the current sales, current profit, and current margin. So In 2024, the current overall sales for that year was 300,000. The current profit was 60,000 and the current margin was 20%. Then we set our 3-year target. So in 3 years' time, what do we want our annual target or our annual metrics to be? So the target here for the sales is 1 million. The target for the profit is 300K. And then the target margin is 30%. And then based on that, things are being calculated in the back end here. So first of all, we can see that that would mean the quarter-on-quarter growth would be about 11%. And then if we scroll down here and just skip over these sections for a second, we then have this essentially this 3 different views. So first of all, the straight line is basically going to calculate based on what your targets are for 3 years' time, what you need to be getting quarter on quarter to basically keep up with that target and to eventually achieve it at the end of the 3 years. So if I want to make 1 million in sales in my 3rd year, then in Q1, I would need to be selling $83,000 worth of services. In Q2, 92,000. In Q3, 102,000, all the way down into Q12. And then I'd be hitting that 1 million mark. And then based on that, we'll also see what the profit would be based on the target margin being 30%. So that's for straight line. And then when we come up here, you can see that we have the sales targets and profit targets in a Notion chart in the straight line. But then we also have projected, and essentially what projected is doing is if you have your own expectations of how much you're going to make throughout the year, if you have seasonality to think about, if people tend to buy less from you in the winter months, if you have a boost in sales during the summer and you know that, then you can be a bit more sensible about what you expect to be making quarter on quarter. So for example, here you can see in Q1, we're expecting to make actually 100K because that's a good quarter for us, as opposed to what was the straight line target of 83,000. And then finally, we'll come over to the actual. So we targeted 100,000, but the actual for this Q1 was 80,000. And again, all of this is being put up into the graphs, so we can now see the projected sales targets versus the profit targets, the actual versus the projected, and so on and so forth. So once we've made our 3-year plans, we can then also make quarterly plans. And we can see here, we've got an example of a quarterly plan for Q1. So at the very top, we have our metrics and the revenue unit goals and revenue by month. Again, we would look back to our 3-year target to actually be more accurate about what this needs to be. So instead of just sort of having a general feeling, I know for my revenue goals for this particular quarter, it should be 83,000 because that's what's in straight line. But I also can set a better and best metric. And then based on that, I can also then break that down by the month. So I would need to make 27,750 to reach that 83,000 goal. Then we can set an overall theme for this quarter. And then what we like to do here at Workflow Lab is to first set the metrics. So we'll set 3 key metrics here. Then we would set the objectives, and then we would set project initiatives within this. So just tracking the line between one of those. So let's say that this year, the overall theme is founder freedom because you're thinking about systemizing your agency and removing the CEO from the day-to-day operations. Well, one of the KPIs you might want to think about is utilization rate as a percentage for your different team members. So you would set that as the key KPI. And then an objective that would probably align to that would be to systemize your sales, or maybe systemize your fulfillment, for example. So that would be the objective. And then if we was to open up this objective, we can see in here we can create project initiatives. So map sales systems, build sales project page, equip sales process. These are 3 project initiatives that are essentially going to push us towards this overall objective. Inside of each of the project initiatives, like any project inside of Agency HQ, we also have the option to create tasks. So I can create a new task in here that would be associated to this project initiative and then be sent into all of our views of where we have tasks. The goals page is just basically going to group together all of our objectives and project initiatives. So throughout the year, we can always refer back to this. And then also we have those KPIs linked here as well. So our key performance indicators. We set our KPIs as monthly targets. So let's say for this evergreen KPI, we have the monthly target of $5,000. So that's the monthly target. And then what that does is it's calculated down into a weekly target of $1,151. And then essentially we would track our KPI on a week-to-week basis. So the owner of this KPI, which is me, is in charge of logging this KPI. So to log the KPI, we press the log KPI button, and it's going to be set to today. I'll make sure that the week commencing is for this week. And then I can see the goal is 1,151. Let's say we smashed the target this particular week and I set it to 2,000. So now we have logged this KPI. We can see that the week actual is updated to 2,000. But most importantly, we can also see that the month current is currently on 4,350. And so what we also have here at the end is this status option. So this status option is basically allowing the CEO to get everyone in the team to input their own KPIs. And then it is that person's job, the KPI owner's job, to come to the status and basically mark it with either being behind. If it's behind, we mark it as red. So we're not going to be able to reach the monthly target based on what is currently happening. If we are behind, but we have a plan, we mark it here in orange. And then we also leave a comment using this comment feature here to say, this is the plan to catch up with this particular KPI. Or alternatively, as is the case in this one, if it looks like we're going to hit our target, we can just say this is on track. Or even if we have hit our target, we can set this to achieve. The next area we have is process, and this starts with our systems database. And so systems inside of Agency HQ are just a collection of processes. So some examples we have here, grouped in the fulfillment department, is client onboarding. Client onboarding is a system, is something that many people are in charge of and collaborate on. It has multiple processes and multiple pieces of technology and departments interfacing. So inside of the client onboarding, if we open this up, we can actually see the processes that live inside it. So for client onboarding, we have the processes of submitting that one deal form we saw earlier. We have the client completing the onboarding funnel, reviewing tasks in the client project, and hosting the onboarding call and gathering brand assets. So these are the different processes. And then once we have our processes here, for each of the processes, we can then equip them. So first of all, we can say which role is in charge of this process. We can also say who has been trained on this particular process in the team. So let's just say it's just me at the moment. And then we can link out to our wiki database and basically equip this process with different wiki items. So this submit one deal form has two pieces of wiki items that are equipping it. So first of all, the actual one deal form that we can see is shown here, the one deal form in our wiki database. But then also what's helping this process is the client onboarding automation that we have set up. And again, if we open up the wiki page here, we have all of the documentation about this automation and what it is doing. Because of that, we said in our process strength status that this process is excellent. And what that is going to do is up at the top here in the system, we're getting an overall process strength of 40%. Comparatively, if we look at the other three processes that we have here, none of these have any wiki items associated, so we can only assume that they are not being equipped or supported by any sort of equipment here, and so they currently have a process strength of not started, or we might even put this into the to improve status. But of course we have the wiki here that we can also see, so this is the wiki database. In this all view, we're grouping by policy, by reference, by SOP, by checklist, template, automation, and job description. And inside the wiki database, we have a bunch of templates that help us with the actual writing of whatever the wiki item is. So for example, for a SOP or standard operating procedure, the instructions for a process, we have a template here that helps us write this by setting up the context, what the actual steps are, with a toggle to help us add any additional information, as well as an FAQ section. Inside of any of the wiki items as well, we have the option to use Notion's verification feature to basically say how long this SOP should be verified for and when it might potentially be outdated and we need to go ahead and review it. In the process section, we also have a section to drop all of our different softwares with links to URLs, the employee access and the number of people who have seats to this particular software. And as well as that, we have that services database that we saw earlier that connects to our deals and our client projects. And essentially just here is where we log them and to show whether it's a project or a retainer. And then finally, our execution has the tools and the principles that we need to execute on a day-to-day basis. So first of all, we have our team, and we can see essentially the different departments and inside of each of the departments, the systems that they basically manage. We have the different roles grouped by department and the employee who is currently in that role. And then for any of these roles, we may have the processes that they are in charge of. And then finally, we have our employees database here. And what we also do in our employees database, as well as showing general information. So for Rachel, we can see her email, her job title, her working hours, where she's based. We also get a headshot, departments, roles, software access. But what we also do in the page body is use the personal user manual. So this is basically where we can almost create a mini wiki item on this particular person that everyone can come in and take a look and see what's their working style, what are some hobbies they like, how they learn, that sort of thing. And even the option for this person to leave a video entry for people to take a look at. The next tool we have are L10 meetings or level 10 meetings. Again, this is inspired by EOS, but essentially this is the meeting cadence and the meeting agendas that are going to help run your team. If we take a look here, we have multiple templates for the different agendas. But essentially we have one for setting our 3-year targets, our quarterly targets, a monthly check-in, and then a team weekly. If we take a look at the team weekly, we have, of course, a template for the agenda. So starts with a segue, setting the note taker, icebreaker, capacity check-in for each of the different people. Then we have a review of the calendar, have a review of our KPIs, linking to our KPI database, initiatives, client projects, to-dos, and then eventually what takes up the majority of a team weekly is the issues, which I'll show you in a second. But essentially we have multiple templates for those different types of meetings with recommended agendas for your team to run through. And of course, each of these become actual notes inside of this database that you can then review. If someone didn't attend the meeting, they can get a summary of this meeting and what happened. And basically for everyone to track the meetings over time. As I hinted to earlier, we also have a take on the issue tracking inside of EOS. So we have IAOs, and this stands for issues, awarenesses, and opportunities. So essentially, if there are any issues that we need to track, any awarenesses, so potentially not an issue, but something that everyone should just be aware of. So as an example here, we have the CEO, Sam, is going on holiday from the 1st to the 1st of March. Not an issue, but just something we might want to plan for in the future, or an opportunity. So maybe an idea someone's had for a new service we could offer, or some way we could delight the customer along the customer journey. Some things that typically wouldn't get tracked if we didn't have a place to put them, but we can put them in here. And finally, we have our general tasks page, and this is essentially a link of our overall tasks database, but just filtering by general tasks. So tasks that don't live to a particular workflow, don't have an entire dedicated space to be managed, but can just be completed with a simple task in our task manager. So for example, complete bookkeeping. We probably have our accounting software, which has all that information elsewhere. So we don't need to keep it inside a Notion, but we still want to manage the task inside a Notion and make sure someone has been assigned it and that it's been set to a due date. While we're here, you also notice in Notion, we have the ability to set recurring tasks that are automatic. So we can have this monthly recurring task of complete bookkeeping. This was set for January 1st. So if I mark this off as done, eventually that automation will recreate that task and move it for the next month ahead and assign it to me, as well as having the wiki item for the SOP about how to complete bookkeeping here. The final page I haven't shown you inside of Agency HQ is our everything page. And essentially this is the company dashboard that takes everything that we've seen today and groups it or consolidates it into this one page. So you as the CEO can get a pulse on your business. So this is organized within some toggles, but essentially we have all of the information from the agency OS here, and we can click through the different tools and equipment. And then we can also click through to this agency OS page and come to the dedicated page itself. We can also see all of our different projects throughout the workspace. So the initiatives, the content, the deals, the clients. And so we can click through all of these. And then we also have the ability to see all of the different tasks assigned to everyone throughout the workspace in one view. We can see things by assignee, by due date, or even by the task calendar. And of course, we could actually open up this as a calendar if we want to bring our task into Notion calendar. Here we have all of the docs. So we have our general docs, our level 10 meetings, we have our wiki database, and then there are a few occasions that we may be using dedicated docs database like our deals workflow and our hiring workflow, because we're trying to keep some of that information sensitive from the rest of the team. And finally, as you saw before, we have our timesheet, which allows us to see how much time everyone's tracked by participant, by client project, as well as being able to look at things like charts and seeing how much people are tracking their time. So that is a comprehensive overview of Agency HQ. Like I said at the beginning of this video, you can grab this template for yourself by heading over to workflowlab.co/Agency HQ or using the link down below in the description. And I'd also like to mention that for that price, you get more than the template itself. So you get access to our private community and our dedicated training course. You get one-to-one message support from me and my team. And of course, access to all future updates. So once again, if you want to get a complete done for you agency system inside of Notion with a click of a button, head over to workflowlab.co/Agency HQ or use the link down below in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.